Hi everyone, good day. I'm Bea Castañeda and this is my partner, Crystal D. Perenio. For today's discussion, we'll be sharing our thoughts on how Walter Mignolo's ideas connect with Gayatri Spivak's concept of subalternity.
Yes, and our focus for today is that we decided to look at how both thinkers talk about knowledge, who gets to create it, and whose voices are left unheard, especially in this post-colonial society like ours.
Let's start with Mignolo. In The Darker Side of Western Modernity, he talks about epistemic disobedience, which means resisting the dominance of Western ways of knowing. He argues that colonialism didn't just conquer lands, it conquered knowledge itself. European thought became the universal standard while indigenous systems were labeled as backward or unscientific.
Yes, exactly. Mignolo wants us to delink from that colonial matrix of power, not just to reject Western ideas entirely, but also to see how they've been used to dominate. Knowledge became political, and as Lyotard said in the postmodern condition, knowledge is never neutral, meaning it is shaped by power and the language that we use.
Right. And Braidotti in the Posthuman adds that we need to embody new ways of knowing, like grounded in lived local experiences rather than abstract Western ideals.
Yeah, and now Spivak connects this through her essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? She explains there that subalterns are socially, politically, and culturally excluded and are often silenced because the structures of power decide who gets to speak.
Exactly. If Mignolo focuses on how knowledge systems are colonial, Spivak focuses on the silencing that results from it. When knowledge is filtered through Western categories, the subaltern's voice can't truly be heard.
Yes, and Baudrillard would even say that when we represent the subaltern, we sometimes only produce simulacra. It's the copy of reality that replaces the real. And that's why Spivak is cautious about who gets to speak for whom.
And this is where Freire in Pedagogy of the Oppressed comes in also. He reminds us that liberation requires dialogue. Knowledge should flow from real experiences and not just from top-down instruction.
And if we think about this in the Philippine context, we can really see what they mean, right? For example, our educational system, it still mirrors Western models from the language that we use, the theories we teach, and English remain prestigious, right? The language, while local languages and indigenous knowledge are often excluded from the classroom.
That's a perfect example of what Mignolo calls epistemic injustice. The way we learn often favors the colonizer's perspective instead of our own realities. When local communities speak from their lived experiences, they're often dismissed, which is exactly what Spivak means when she says the subaltern cannot speak or at least cannot be heard.
Yeah, and it's not that the subaltern is silent. It's that the system isn't built to hear them because we see this in the closure of Lumad schools where indigenous ways of teaching based on land, oral tradition, and community were branded as not standard.
Yes, and in the Cordillera, Igorot rituals preserve ecological knowledge that rarely makes it into textbooks. Even in the Visayas, local healers or mananambal are often dismissed as superstitious, when their practices actually show deep scientific and cultural wisdom.
That shows what Gramsci, I don't know how to pronounce this word, would call cultural hegemony, where one worldview dominates the defines what counts as we know true.
Exactly. So, following Mignolo, epistemic disobedience means reclaiming our right to produce knowledge based on our own experiences. Valuing bayanihan, indigenous research, and multilingual education, as Baba says in The Location of Culture, we can use our hybrid identity as Filipinos, both local and global, to resist from the margins.
Yes, I actually like how you said resist from the margins. That's where Mignolo and Spivak actually meet. And Mignolo gives us the action. Like, for example, the delinking from colonial thinking, while Spivak gives us the ethics, the reminder not to speak over others.
That is true. And Derrida, in Writing and Difference, reminds us that meaning is never fixed. So even when we speak, we must be aware of the limits of language. And Foucault, in Discipline and Punish, shows how power hides inside everyday institutions, like, for example, schools, classrooms, and even grading systems.
Yes, actually, that's a good example also. And that's why Freire insists that education should be dialogical, not something imposed to the students or to people, but rather it should be shared. Because according to Gramsci's idea of counter hegemony, it gives us hope that culture itself can be a site of resistance.
Yes, that is true. The subaltern might not always speak in English, in policy, or in academia, but they do speak through, like, for example, art, community work, and oral tradition. That's where knowledge becomes truly decolonized.
So, in the end, the tension between Mignolo and Spivak isn't actually a conflict. It's a productive dialogue, we can say, that one teaches us to act and the other reminds us to act responsibly.
Yes, and in the Philippine context, it means creating a space where all voices, like for example, Lumad, Igorot, Visayan, Moro, and even others, are part of our national story of knowledge.
Yes, and if we listen through their terms and not just focus on ours, that's when the subaltern finally speaks to us.
So, yeah, to us, the intersection between Mignolo and Spivak is about giving back the power to speak, and to know and to define reality. That's what true intellectual decolonization looks like.
Yes, and to end this discussion, thank you for listening, and we hope this short discussion of ours helped shed light on how Mignolo and Spivak's ideas connect in the fight for epistemic and cultural liberation.
Yes, thank you for listening. Stay critical, stay reflective, and goodbye.